Hello, everyone, again. So very excited to bring the next speaker up to the stage here virtually. Dr. Beth Ripley is someone who I didn't know in early March, and I feel like I know very well now 6 months later, as we've spent many days together over the past 6 months. So very excited to have Dr. Ripley on to share a message about where VA is going and what you're doing to kind of introduce and incorporate advanced manufacturing into the VHA system.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. Hopefully you can see the slides okay. And we will just dive right in. And so today I'm going to tell a story about VHA and 3D printing, kind of where we started on this journey, what we're up to now, and where we hope to go soon in the future. I like this near term and now term, so we'll try to kind of mix that in. So this is just the crib notes, what we're going to go over. I'm going to talk about the evolution of 3D printing at VHA. One of the really important things I hope you see through this story is the importance of the public-private partnerships that we've made in our growth. Each time that we make a new partnership, we seem to exponentially speed towards growth and maturation of our system, and we hope to continue that. And then really now with COVID, we are getting down and dirty about what does point of care manufacturing really mean, and we might try to unpack a little bit of that. So of course, every story told by a radiologist begins in a dark room. But actually, it's not my story. It's the VA story, and it started way before I got there. So we have to go back to 2010. And part of the theme here is I'm going to have the time stamp in the bottom. And some of these slides are actual authentic old slides that I pulled from decks. But this is where VA was in 2010. You can see that they are an early adopter of 3D printing. This is Richmond, VA, turning out all kinds of assistive technology items. And so these are items that they've designed for each and every veteran to help them interact better with their environment. A few of my favorites down here, this is the makeup brush adapter. This was for a veteran who had tremors. It was very difficult for her to hold on to things like makeup brushes. And this was a simple but ingenious solution that hooks over her hand, holds the brush in just the right angle, and allowed her to apply her own makeup. Along the same themes over here is a pool cue adapter that was made for this veteran who experienced some traumatic brain injury and lost a lot of control over his arms. Now he was an expert pool player before his injury, and he wanted to get back to that. So they designed this little roller that got him back to shooting pool. Also, neck and neck, they compete, Richmond and Minneapolis, about who was first. But at the same time, 2010, over in Minneapolis, this is Steve Morin. He was working with a group called MADE to design instruments and other types of widgets. One of my favorites is that finger-looking thing that says MADE. And that is actually modeled after a resident's hand. So if any of you are in medicine or watch shows, you know that the residents always get hazed in surgery. And so they actually would have a resident come and scrub into every one of these surgeries just to stand there and hold their hand out so that they could keep all the cords from the surgeon's equipment off the sterile field. And so that resident would stand there, for 10 or 12 hours. And that's just sort of a badge of honor for residents. But Steve here felt mercy, so he designed this solution here that saved residents everywhere. So this is a finger adapter pretty much to hold those cords off. In 2017, this is when I came to the VA, and I brought with me as a radiologist the interest in pre-surgical planning models. So these are the first few that we kicked off at 2017 in Puget Sound. One of these, the one in the bottom right-hand corner, was made in a friend's basement off his printer. It's a Formlabs printer. I painted this with my daughter's paint. You can actually see a theme of me painting in the early days. Not beautiful, but functional, and that's how we kind of got it done. Really, though, I think the most important thing is that we all met each other and we started talking, and we got this kind of harebrained idea that we should all just string together. Even though we were doing different things, widgets, tools, assistive tech, kidneys, etc. We all had printers, we all had common problems, and we all worked in the VA. So we imagined this idea of a national 3D printing network. And this is the actual slide from when I presented it. And I'm happy to see that we're not totally off. So, our goals here were integrating resources, building technical expertise, creating SOPs to ensure quality and safety, and quantifying value. Now, there's a lot still to be done off that list 4 years later, but that was the vision. And this is where one of the first partnerships we had really kicked us off. So we partnered with Stratasys to build out this network, and they donated 5 printers that we placed in VAs sort of strategically across the country. So those are the 5 stars you can see: Seattle, Albuquerque, San Antonio, Orlando, and Boston, adding to our existing sites of Richmond and Minneapolis. And at that point, we had some expertise in New Orleans, but we grew, and we got some buy-in from the leadership and started to move forward. This was kind of the concept. This is Seattle to Orlando. I knew how to segment data at that time. Orlando had cases and printers, so we were trying to explore how they could send their images up to Seattle so I could segment them. I could send them back to Orlando and print. So we were working on that. But it also exposed one of our challenges, which is that it's hard to make some of these models. And we're trying to learn all the different softwares, and we started a partnership with GE Healthcare to look at how they could adapt radiology-specific tools to enable better and faster 3D printing. Back in 2018, we also started thinking about quality and safety, but this was our version. Remember, we're still in the hospital. We don't have manufacturing friends yet, so we're doing it the old-fashioned way. We had cadaveric hearts and other tissues that we would CT scan and then print out and then try to measure, just to try to understand what the limits of the technologies were. And we continued to grow. And by 2019, we had 34 hospitals across the VA with 3D printing, in large part funded by our innovation program, which put significant resources towards this, as well as top cover all the way to the top of VHA with some executive sponsorship, which was really critical for us. And we also started to cross-pollinate those capabilities. So I had mentioned assistive technology, we had PreSurgical Planning, we had a budding orthotics and prosthetics group, and of course dental had been around for a while too and was growing. And so each one of those 34 sites started to adopt more than one of these technologies, and they just, again, started spreading back and forth so that we had them popping up at multiple hospitals. And that was really fast-tracked by this advisory committee that we had set up back in 2017. And I call it the Noah's Ark. We took somebody from every walk of life. We had patient safety, we had surgery, radiology, we had IT, we had logistics, we basically somebody from each of the major groups. And I also want to point out, I don't know if you can see my cursor, probably not, but Megan McCarthy is in the corner here. She's from NIH. And then also Matthew DePrima and James Coburn from FDA are at the table as well. So we had partnered across the agencies at this point in the advisory committee. And this was to think about large-scale infrastructure. How do we bring together networks? How do we move across hospitals? How do we share resources? As we got into that, we then thought, we should really not just stop at the walls of VHA, and we should go to DoD as well. And so we had a joint incentive fund funded where we decided that we were going to try to build out a quality management system that went across both VA and DoD, and we wanted to register with the FDA to make 1 or 2 items off of titanium printers. And we also wanted to think about training programs for staff. So we were really excited at the very end of 2019 for this to be awarded. And this was going to be our next trajectory. And then of course, COVID-19 hits and everything changes. And our first focus really was this shortage of PPE endangering healthcare workers. And we all had friends and colleagues at New York at this time, this is March 3rd, that we were really worried about. And so we went into the hospital to see what we could do. Of course, 3D printing didn't make sense quite at the beginning here, but we thought we would give it a try. This is one of our first forays. This is the stopgap face mask that we made. And so you can see on March 22nd, I think that was like a Saturday, we decided to go in, we scanned Chris Richburg's face, he's here. We started trying to think about what to do. Our first prototype, March 23rd, pretty rudimentary looking. There's a rubber band involved here, but it was a start, and we just kept iterating. So March 24th, you can see by March 26th, we had some surgeons and other end users coming in to give us feedback. March 27th, we did a bunch of fit testing. And then our printers went down for a few days because, we were pushing them beyond where we had taken them before. And, that's just always what happens, but set us back a few days, but we got back on track. And by April 1st, we had our first design. So this is the first iteration. Right around this exact same time, we formed a really important partnership between FDA, NIH, VA, and America Makes with the goal of sorting through all of the incredible swell of ideas that were out there at that time, from face shields to face masks to ventilator parts. We wanted to come together and try to figure out a way to curate those and provide the safest and best solutions out to the general public. So we did that through interagency MOUs and collaborative research agreements, and created this COVID-19 3D printing rapid response team. And we hosted designs on NIH, VA tested the designs, FDA provided guidance and review, and America Makes played the role of matchmaker, so connecting those who needed products with those who could make them. And these numbers keep evolving, but this is where we were at maybe a week or two ago, with almost 750,000 unique site visitors, 611 published designs, 1.36 million total views. And one thing I really love about this is you can see it's not just in the US. This was worldwide. Meanwhile, again, in VA, we start to grow again. And we went from 34 sites to 61 sites since COVID. And so these are all of the sites. I can't even make this into a nice graph yet because this data is just hot off the press, but we've got 61 sites here, several of them with just one type of printer, which is what the small dots are, several of them with many types of printers at this point, continuing to grow. We've got 176 printers within the system, and that number is counting, and they're not all the same type. You can see we do have a few of certain technologies or vendors that are larger here, but we have multiple different types of printers within the system. And when you step back and think about where we've come in the past few years, really, this is looking a lot like a hockey stick, I think, with some exponential growth, and we will see where we go next. But meanwhile, we do have some ideas, and this is going towards the future. We have set up the capability to work together across a few sites that we're kind of locking down to start to build out a comprehensive quality management system. We did just register our first VA hospital with FDA last week. We are putting finishing touches on a really, down and dirty quality management system that gets us up and running as we figure this all out. And we are breaking ground within hospitals, in 3 hospitals, to build out infrastructure. So this is in the basement of our hospital in Seattle. The really significant thing here is that hospital real estate is like gold, and we've gotten 6,000 square feet albeit in the basement, but as a radiologist, I like the basement, so I have no problem with this. But so we're moving in here. We're not waiting to paint the ceilings, you know, or the floors. We're just getting printers in here and trying to get up and running. And, you know, I know that we were a little behind on time, so I tried to kind of cruise through here, because I think the really interesting part of this is, where are we going next, right? So we have linked some hospitals, we have top cover, we have groundswell of interest, we have mini printers, and we have an immediate, like, what are we doing right now plan, which is to try to buttress our supply chains as needed and also share those solutions out. But we really want to focus on the near term next and the long term next. And that's really about making it right. Like, how do we do this? What does this point of care manufacturing look like? I think I had no clue how onerous, like, OQ could be, until we're just printing and printing and printing for weeks on end just to try to, you know, test printers. These are some of the things we just, you know, probably didn't grasp early on. But we do have some new partnerships that are very important in this as well. You know, notably with the mask, the first mask, we had a partnership with 3D Systems. And then we have a play to try to bring that into N95 realm, and that was a partnership with the Barnes Group and Associates, or actually I think it's the Global Associates now, TGBA. We have obviously our new partnership with America Makes, as well as governmental partnerships. And we want to just keep on growing, and our goal here is to be a test bed for this concept of both public-private partnerships and how we work together, but also really trying to unpack what is truly involved in point of care manufacturing and what makes sense and what doesn't. In going fast, I think I missed telling you one important thing that I do want to be a takeaway beyond, you know, the growth in VA, our eagerness to understand this situation and grow it, which is, why are we even bothering to make it in the hospital? Why don't we just find somebody else to make it? And this is a tough question, and, you know, there's a lot of different answers and people feel differently, but I will tell you why we believe this is important. It really came down to the mask case, where we could see how fast we could iterate when we had the surgeons, the end users, in-house right next to us, and we could just run prototypes over daily, throw them on them, see what they say, pull them off, run back to the printer, and hit go again. Also, in terms of testing and efficacy, we had all of our safety team right embedded with us, and it just allowed us to work so much faster, and I think get down to, you know, the chase of what we were trying to do. So that design and development and testing component in the hospital, I think, is a very valuable component that we wouldn't want to lose. Whether or not manufacturing happens in the hospital or then translates back out, you know, who knows? Something to figure out. But again, I will stop there because I know I had till noon, and I see 11:57, and I want to be able to answer questions if I can.
You can, and you have time. So
all right.
Thank you so much. Two questions that came in. First is around something you just hit on a little bit. So how do you control the quality of the products you 3D print? Does FDA have requirements and methods to assure quality? So I know you hit on that a little bit. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about what that means to you in the hospital.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of confusion and just exploration still, I think, about what it means when you're making in the hospital. And, you know, I think the bottom line, well, there's black and white on two sides, and then there's a lot of gray in between. So if we're talking about one patient and one doctor, and that doctor is making something specifically for his or her patient, and, you know, kind of the safety of that is known, that could be construed as under the practice of medicine. And, you know, that's just between the doctor and the patient. The other extreme is you're a hospital and you're putting out like thousands or hundreds of thousands of these things and selling them. Well, you're not a hospital at that point. You are clearly a manufacturer, and you thus need to do exactly what the FDA says. And then you can start to argue these kind of like gray areas in between. But our take on this is that the FDA regulations are there to ensure quality and safety of the product. So we pretty much feel like the second you take away from that first black and white, like just what's going on between one patient and one doctor, that's when we need to really start thinking about and adopting the concept and the idea and the real. We are no longer a hospital. We are a manufacturer at that point, and thus we need to obey all the same rules and regulations as anyone else. And that's where the quality management system, you know, registration, just, you know, again, luckily I'm not the regulatory person, but I've seen enough to know the pain. And so, you know, we're learning that, and it's going to be hard, and some of it we're going to fail at, and some of it we're going to be able to do. But what we again want to do is really be a sandbox for people to think about this. So we're going to be really open and honest. What you're going to be seeing from us over the next several years, hopefully, is us talking about the growing pains, what we've learned, what's gone right and what's gone wrong, so that other hospitals kind of know what they might be getting into.
Good deal. Last question. So, you know, CT data is very common for you, and having access to that. Do you have technologies that transfer scan data readily over to AM or additive manufacturing files, so you can, you know, very quickly and easily make, you know, reproduce, whether it's implants, a, you know, growth, a surgical aid, whatever it might be? How do those two technologies work together in your world?
It's a really important question. There are several softwares out there, growing number. I won't go through all the manufacturing names because as government, I don't necessarily want to do all of that in case it's, you know, seen as an endorsement. But I think many people, if you Google and look for segmentation software, you're going to find a few industry giants that are coming traditionally out of the AM space. You're going to find a few emerging players coming out of the imaging space, and then something in between. The bottom line is it's challenging. It's variably challenging to change some of the imaging data into models. It requires some level of understanding of the physics of imaging and also anatomy. And the holy grail is that is all done by AI or in an automated way. And there are, so same thing, if you look at some of the major manufacturers, either in the AM space or the imaging space, you'll see that some do have segmentation software solutions that are automated, which is fantastic. And from a QMS perspective, if it's locked down, that's great. The problems come when you have noise in your data, aberrant anatomy, or something else that's off. So you have to be careful. I think for us, it's worrisome to just depend on that, because you're going to find a lot of errors depending on what your population looks like. And so, you know, I think that we'll see a lot of growth in this area. I think that will unlock a lot for people. I don't think that we're 100% there yet. And again, very long-winded answer from me, but kind of a challenging question.
Yeah, we're full of them. You should hang out with us a bit.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Been a pleasure working with you over the months, and continue to work with your team. I think that was helpful for everyone. You know, we haven't had a lot of that perspective over the last couple of years. So appreciate your willingness to jump on here and get involved with us. So thank you much, Beth.
Absolutely. Looking forward to collaborating with everyone in the future too.